everyone. Welcome to week 3 of English 1020. This will be the first of 2 videos this week, talking you through or going over some of the concepts you'll need for your rhetorical analysis as you finish that project up. And then the second video will transition us to looking at our second project for the semester called the iSearch, okay? So in this video, however, I can never get my camera right, or the little thing right where I want it. In this video, I have some reminders for you. We are then going to talk about project 1, just do a quick refresher, make sure we're all on the same page about that. And then finally, I want to talk about how to properly cite your article for your rhetorical analysis paper, okay? I also just want to say, based off the dog meme here, as you can tell, I'm so proud of you all. You've all been doing a great job of turning things in on time, contacting me if you have any problems, and just staying on top of your work. So you should feel very proud of yourself, and I'm certainly proud of all of you. So keep that up. We are, again, in week 3, so we're already, I guess, 25% of the way there. Which is just crazy how fast it goes in an 8-week course. But keep it up. You are all doing awesomely, and I'm so proud of you. That's my positive moment for the day, okay? Here are some reminders. Make sure you check in with me at least once before July 17th. My virtual office hours are Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m., but I'm available outside of this like a lot. So please email me if you have a different time that works for you, and I will get back to you and we should be able to work something out, okay? But don't forget, this is worth 50 points, so it's really important to do. You have about 2 weeks left to do this, so please make a note of it. Send me an email if that time doesn't work for you so that we can set something up, okay? Secondly, what is due this week? On Friday by 11:59 p.m., you have your rhetorical analysis paper and the cover letter due. And then on Sunday, the 12th, you have your 3rd weekly discussion board due. So if you've been working on your rhetorical analysis paper over the past few weeks, then hopefully this week will not be too arduous for you. You really just need to continue working on that paper, edit it, proofread it, make sure it's in good shape, and then do a weekly discussion board. So not too bad this week, all right? Okay. So I want to briefly talk about the cover letter component of the rhetorical analysis because we haven't really talked about it yet. So this information is taken directly from the assignment sheet, so you can find this there as well. The cover letter is meant to do a few things. If you notice on the syllabus, the 4 learning outcomes of the course are research, writing, reading, and reflecting. Not in that order, but that's okay. And typically in 1020, we teach this course with a 5th project at the end that is a reflection. So because this is an 8-week course, instead of teaching a reflection paper as its own thing, we've decided in the 8-week course to teach it as, to do reflection with each project instead of kind of waiting till the end to look back on everything. So that's the purpose of the cover letter. If that helps you, sometimes it helps me when I know why I'm doing something, then I feel more inclined to do it or more inspired that it's not just for no reason, right? It's not just busy work. It's meant to take the place of a reflection paper. So in some ways, it might be easier that you reflect multiple times and you're only looking at one paper. I don't know, but that's why you're doing it, okay? So the reflective cover letter, essentially, if you do it and you obviously put some thought into it, you'll get the full 25 points for doing it. But the cover letter is meant to allow you to reflect on the writing process and what you learned from doing this paper. Okay, so how you should submit the cover letter is just attach it to the front of your paper, your rhetorical analysis. If you have problems, I know Word is not my friend at least. You can always upload 2 documents. It's not the end of the world, but theoretically you should upload it as like one document, okay? Your cover letter should address the following things, which will be on the next slide, but you're writing a letter, right? So you can address it to me. It should be formatted like a letter, and because of that, it's meant to be informal, right? And that's why I think the department wanted to structure it as a letter so that it doesn't feel super structured or super formal. It's meant to just be kind of like the discussion boards, and that like you want to edit it and you want to proofread it, but it's not meant to be very formal or rigid. It's meant to allow you to actually reflect and engage with how you're feeling about the project and the work, okay? So it should be about 2 to 3 pages, double spaced, which should be easy. Once we look at the list of questions, should be pretty easy to get that. Okay, so here are the 6 questions that you should tackle. I'm not going to like actually look and see, did you tackle all 6 of these? But certainly if you only talk about 2, I will know. I would say that you should aim to at least answer 4 of these questions. If you are a concise writer, then I would say you should answer all 6 to meet that like 2 to 3 page requirement. But I think 4 is a good number, okay, as a minimum, certainly. So you can just talk about the process of writing your rhetorical analysis. So you can talk about the pre-writing you did, any drafting, editing, if you did any peer review, the research process, any of the conversations you've had with me, if you've talked to your peer mentor, if you've talked to the Writing Center, if you've talked to your best friend going to Grand Valley about a rhetorical analysis, you can include that there and just talk about how that helped or didn't help your writing process. Secondly, what was the most difficult part of this assignment? Why do you think it was difficult? That might be interesting to reflect upon to see how you can, or if you can kind of pick apart why a certain thing was difficult and how maybe we can make it less difficult moving forward. Certainly the rhetorical analysis is not a paper you're going to really have to write again. So there is some weird genre things as you like write something that you're, again, probably not going to have to do. But if you have things that were difficult, like citing, it might be interesting to reflect on that and see what we can do for you. Third, what was the easiest or most enjoyable part of the assignment? I assume that turning it in is the most enjoyable part of the assignment, but what went well for you during the writing process? What knowledge and skills can you take away from this assignment into your future writing challenge? Again, this isn't a project you're going to have to do again, but certainly it is my hope that you will take away the same analytical capabilities and critical thinking abilities that you are cultivating through this project into your future assignments, right? Again, this is the work of a rhetorical analysis is something that you do every day when you evaluate things, even if it's something as simple as a text message from a friend, right? You're still evaluating the way that your friend is speaking, the message that is sent, what they're trying to get you to do from that message, okay? So 4 should be really easy to answer, I hope. I hope that you can see that there is value in doing this project. And then question 5. So looking at the 4 learning outcomes, what have you learned so far? What do you think you'll take into the next project? What outcome do you think that maybe you struggle with or you need to work on? And then finally, what personal goals do you have for the rest of the course and how can you achieve them? You can also add in there if you think there is something that I can help you in terms of achieving these goals. If you are like, I really struggle with citation and I really need you to go over that in more depth, we are doing that in this video. But and that is something that you, my instructor, can help me with. Please include that. Let me know if there's something that you think that I can do to help you achieve those personal or academic goals as well. Okay, so those are the 6 things. Again, I would say incorporate at least 4 of them in your cover letter, but it's not meant to be a super arduous or challenging component of the project. It's meant to just be a chance for you to reflect on the process thus far. Okay, let's turn out of this PowerPoint. I then wanted to very briefly look at the rubric. This is posted on Canvas, but I think sometimes students forget that there's a rubric there. And I always try to get students to remember, like, look at the rubric. It tells you exactly what I'm looking for. Obviously the assignment sheet does as well, but this is what you're actually being graded on, right? So you can open up the rubric, or you should open up the rubric and make sure that you have all of these components, okay? So we have discussed all of these things in the videos from last week, but make sure that you actually have them all in your rhetorical analysis. So one thing we didn't talk about too much was summary, right? So it makes logical sense though, right? That if you are talking about an article, you should probably summarize the article before you start picking apart the rhetoric of the author, right? So you want to make sure that you're summarizing it, right? You also want to make sure that you describe the rhetorical situation. I've had a lot of students unsure about the rhetorical situation. It always seems like the one component of this project that students struggle with. And I'm not really sure why, but I guess it is maybe complex in that it's kind of like just the whole context, and you're like, how do I talk about that? So if you are struggling with the rhetorical situation, I always tell students to try to boil it down to like what you think the purpose of this piece is, like what inspired this author to write this piece now for this audience. And maybe that helps strip away some of the complexities of the rhetorical situation if you think about it like that. Okay? And then as you can see, the analysis component will be the majority of the points here. So make sure you have all of these things. So you want to make sure that you identify types of claims or types of arguments. As you'll see, it says or, so you don't have to do both. I understand that that might get very long and wordy, but instead you should look for types of claims or types of arguments that you're seeing that author use. Okay? Identify the audience of the article. And then you want to make sure you have ethos, pathos, and logos identified. And you want to back these up with evidence from the text. So I think I said last week that it's not so much about identifying the exact moment that the author uses logos. Like, here is the perfect example of logos so we can all agree on, right? Instead it's saying, I think this is logos, I'm going to claim that this is logos, and then I'm going to back it up with evidence from the text, okay? So I do understand that articles will not always have all three in there, right? So you might want to talk about if you're like, well, this author really uses pathos and they don't really rely on ethos very much. But maybe this is kind of an example of ethos. It is perfectly acceptable to say, here's an example of ethos. It's not the strongest example, but I think that the author does not rely on credibility because they are so busy relying on pathos and establishing an emotional response from the author, or from the audience, right? So it is okay to point out some of the weaknesses or lacks in the article that you're reading, because I do realize that, you know, authors will not, they're not making sure that your rubric is met, right? They're just writing. So it's perfectly fine to do that. You just want to back your argument and your claims up with actual evidence from the text, okay? And then in your conclusion, you want to, again, basically restate your thesis, right? You want to develop your own evaluative claim. So if you remember from last week, we looked at that example that a student wrote about Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech. You want to make a claim about how effective the author is in getting their point across, okay? And then the rest of this is fairly straightforward, right? Is it edited? Do you have it in MLA format? And then here's where you see that cover letter, right? So do you have a cover letter? So as you can see, as long as you address the requirements of the assignment, i.e. you answer 4 of the questions I provided, you'll get that full 25, okay? So take a look at the rubric, make sure that you have all of these things in your paper, and you should be good to go. So let's go back to the PowerPoint really quickly. I will say that I really love reading rhetorical analysis papers. I think that they're a weird paper to write because it doesn't feel like a research paper. You're not necessarily making a thesis in the traditional sense. But I think it's really fun when students pick apart an author's argument and see how authors make their points, and then they can emulate that in their own writing. So I'm really looking forward to getting your papers. But let's move on through to how to cite this paper. So citations are one of the things that I often hear students are struggling with or nervous about when they come to their first year writing course in college. And I totally understand why, because citing is really frustrating, okay? And I say this as someone who is working on my PhD in English. Citations are so specific and they vary between disciplines. I'm sure you are all familiar with MLA. But you might have also heard of things like APA or Chicago, and there are more than that, but they all have different ways of citing information. And it can be really confusing because they're all so different and they're all so nitpicky. You know, one might say you use a colon here, one might say you use a period. It's very easy to be overwhelmed. So that is just to say that I understand why and how it is stressful. I hope that as we go through this course, I can help make it less stressful. I don't remember what week I have it planned for, but in the upcoming weeks, we will talk more in depth about citing. But this is a good chance to just get your feet wet with the rhetorical analysis, because the good news is you only have to have one source cited for this paper. So I've included a screenshot here of what your citation might look like. Most of your articles are probably from a web magazine. Some of them might be newspaper. I don't think so. I think they're all from this. I'm trying to remember exactly which sources I picked, but I try to pick ones that would all be in the same format, okay? So this is what your citation should look like, okay? So I've included 2 links here. If you are not familiar with Purdue OWL, you should be familiar with Purdue OWL. It is pretty much across the board the best source for citation questions. They have not just MLA, but again, they have APA, Chicago. They have a ton of resources if you need to practice really any component of formatting. It's not just citations. If you're like, do I need to double space this? I don't know. Check out Purdue OWL. I use Purdue OWL all the time when I cite things like tweets, for example. I don't often cite things like tweets, but if I were to cite one, I would have no idea how to do it. And I would go to Purdue OWL and I would see how to do it, because I don't do it very often, okay? The second link is, this first one just takes you to Purdue OWL. The second link is directly to the MLA formatting guide. So the first one is if you just kind of want to like browse around Purdue, but the second one is going to take you directly to what you need for this paper. But really what you need for this paper is this screenshot right here, okay? You just need to make sure you have that information on your works cited page. So what does your works cited page look like? Here it is. So a lot of times students also think that works cited pages aren't supposed to be double spaced for some reason. I don't know if that is a horrible thing taught in high school, but your works cited should be in the same format as the rest of your paper. So your paper is going to be double spaced. Your works cited should also be double spaced. Your works cited should also have your last name and the page number up here in the right-hand corner. You will also have the words works cited centered and in the same 12-point font, not bolded, nothing fancy. And then very next line, you'll start your citation. Okay, so obviously this example has a lot of sources. You will only have one, so nice and easy. You can see here, this is called a hanging indent, where the first line is all the way to the left, and then the rest of it is all indented, okay? You should do this with your source. The good news about this project, however, is I take the rhetorical analysis as a good opportunity for me to see where the gaps in the class are as a whole in terms of like formatting, because formatting is one of those things that some high schools really train you how to do this, right? You know how to do this, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, hey, indent, I got it. And then some schools maybe only focus on literature. Maybe you don't really know how to do any of this, and that's perfectly fine. So my advice to you is to check out the resources that I provided, to contact me if you have any questions, but more importantly, use this as like a learning opportunity. As long as you have things cited, you're not going to get marked off, you know, anything crazy. Obviously, if you don't cite things, that is a problem. But this is a good chance to try to figure this out and see where your knowledge is, where your strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to citing, okay? The last thing I want to talk about is in-text citation. So we just talked about how you will format your works cited page, but you're also going to cite things in the paper itself. So after you cite your source by using the quotation sandwich method, you want to make sure that you properly cite your author by using an in-text citation, okay? So an in-text citation is exactly what it sounds like, right? It is a citation that occurs in the text. So as you're writing, it's going to occur right there. So Proper MLA in text citation includes the author's name and the page number the quote is from. So there are two ways that you can do this, okay? And this is taken from Purdue OWL, this example. So if you want more information about this, go check out that. Again, this will be here. This first one says, Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, end quote. Then you have the page number in parentheses, and then you have the period outside of that, okay? The second one, romantic poetry is characterized by this, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, end quote, Wordsworth 263, parenthesis, period. So you might be like, okay, it's pretty similar, don't really see the difference. Both of these have the author's name. You only need the last name, the author's last name, and the page number. However, if in the same sentence you already state the author, like this first example that says Wordsworth stated, you don't need to then tell me Wordsworth in the parenthesis, right? Because we already know it's Wordsworth because you've already told me that in the same sentence. However, in this one, this example, you are not telling me at the beginning that this is Wordsworth. You're just saying romantic poetry is this, and then when I finish that sentence, I'm like, oh, okay, Wordsworth said that. I got it. Okay. Does that distinction make sense? I always tell students, if you are afraid of plagiarizing or you're not sure, it's always better to oversight than to undercite, right? So if you, for example, say this first one and you still include Wordsworth in the parentheses, I'm not going to mark you down for that. Instead, I'm going to mark it and say, hey, by the way, you don't need to do this. You can just put 263 because you've already told me Wordsworth in the beginning. But I'm not going to mark you down. It's so much better to include that information than to say not have any of that information at all, okay? So if you are not certain or you feel like I just want to be safe, I always recommend just go with the second option where you always put the last name of the author in the parentheses, okay? And again, after this first paper, it'll be a good chance for me to see where everyone is and I can see what we need to focus on more in terms of citation, because I'm sure a lot of you are overwhelmed by just this whole process of citing things and we're excited. And that is super normal for this class. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I'm sad that we can't be in person and I usually do like quizzes about this, like fun, like not worth any points quizzes, but we can't do anything like that. But take a breath. It's not as scary as it sounds. And I hope that is helpful, okay? So I think that is all I have for this video. One last thing that I wanted to say, which I should have said at the beginning, and I apologize, is that I did make discussion boards on Canvas for the articles that you all chose for Project 1. And you can use them, you don't have to. I thought they might be a good place if you have a question, you're like, I really don't understand this one specific line, what is the author saying? You could post your question there and other people can answer it, simply because whoever's working on that article, you are picking it apart and you will know a lot more about it than just if you ask your mom, hey, what do you think this means? So there are discussion boards available for the articles that were chosen. So use those if you want. Again, you don't need to or anything, but I thought it might be a good chance to discuss and talk with each other, okay? I think that's all I have for right now. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Continue working on your rhetorical analysis papers. I look forward to reading them, and stay safe, everyone. Bye.